Hello, my name is Terry Paddock, and I'm here to chair a second discussion with the company of On Hostile Ground. And today I'm joined by five of the performers, more than 30 performers that have been involved in the series of videos that are being released as part of this really exciting project. So I'm going to introduce you to each of these people, and then we're going to get straight into it. And when I say your name, if you can just give a wave so people know who I'm talking about. I am joined by Ray Fearon. Give a wave. Thank you, Claire Marie Hall, Michael Matus, Hannah Brown, and Jackie Dubois. Thank you guys for joining us. So before we get into the specifics of this new musical, and I have already spoken to the creatives who've given us a lot of background about how the piece came together overall. But before we speak to that, I really want to talk to you guys as performers. We have all lived through the most incredible year this past year. And for the theater industry in particular, it's been, unprecedented is a hackneyed word already, but it has been. So let's just rewind to March 2020. This musical was in fact not meant to be released as a series of videos. It was meant to be showcased in March 2020 at the Beam Showcase for New Musical Theater. And of course, that was canceled as well as everything else when theaters closed and we quickly went into a full lockdown. So I wanted to get a sense from each of you where you were at that point. And I'm going to start with Hannah, because I think, Hannah, you were due to appear at Beam on Hostile Ground.
Yes, yeah, it was the week before I'd been at the Wicker Husband at the Watermill and seen Charlie, who then directed the piece. And yeah, we were planning to do workshops the following week and then go up to Beam and be part of that festival, which is such a brilliant platform for new musicals. So yeah, that was kind of where we were, and obviously then the world came to a stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and for the rest of you, what were you doing? And can you remember how you felt when you heard that theaters were going to close? I'm going around the screen looking from top to bottom of my screen. So Ray, may I start with you? Where were you in March 2020?
I'd actually just finished a film, and we finished in Bulgaria. No, it was Romania, and I was just about to start this American series. The part I had an American series, and all of a sudden it just ground to a halt. But sort of going back to the theatre, I was asked to do something in the theatre, and I held my horses. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, because there was a few things that came in, and then all of a sudden the pandemic happened, and that was the end of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
yeah, that's where I was at.
and Claire, what about you?
I was actually in the Wicker Husband at the Watermill that Hannah came to see. So was working with Charlie and Darren, who's on the creative team for this, and that was their other musical. And sadly, luckily we got a press night, but then we closed after our press night. So I guess pluses and minuses, but it was sad going back on the train from Newbury to London, completely different London than I left.
That was so strange when the Society of London Theatre and UK Theatre announced that most theatres would close. That was on the Monday the 16th, as you'll all know. And in the West End, most shows did not go ahead that night at all. So they didn't actually know when they had their last performance that it was going to be their last performance. But did you know that night that you were going on and it was going to be the last?
I think it was there was a debate about whether it was actually going to go on. I think Paul, the artistic director of the Watermill, actually said to everyone, "We're going to continue this performance. If everyone feels safe, please. It's up to you if you want to leave." And nobody left, which was lovely. But I think we all assumed we would be back in 2 weeks. I think none of us really realised what would happen.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
very strange.
And Michael, where were you?
I was at Park Theatre. We were doing the play version of the La Cage aux Folles, which Simon Callow translated. It was brilliant. We had about 12 performances left, and then one of the actors left the show. So we, not because he was sick, but just because he was scared. And so we cancelled the last 2 shows of that week, and then on the Monday morning, I was really sick, and so I called the director saying, "Man, I'm coughing. I don't feel good. I think this is it." And then we heard that evening that everything was stopping. And I got COVID as soon as the theatres closed. I just had COVID like really, really badly for about 2 weeks. So
Oh my
at
gosh.
least I got it out of the way. I mean, it was quite scary, but I got it out of the way. But yeah, the whole year was like lined up. It was going to be really great. I had a tour of Scotland of a David Mamet play, and then was going to do singing in the rain for the rest of the year. So it's all deferred.
Yeah, and have you your health, has it got back to normal? Have you suffered
Yeah,
anything?
I didn't have the sort of the long version that people have had. I just got to the point where I was a bit scared because my breathing had got very, very, very shallow. Rang the NHS and just said, "What do I do?" And they said, "Oh, you're speaking, you're breathing after every 7 words, which is not too bad. So when you're breathing after every 3 words, call us back."
Oh.
So
Wow.
I just and then after about a week, just slowly got a bit better. But yeah, it was definitely, for us 50 pluses, it's not a very nice experience.
No, gosh. And Jackie, but how about you? Where were you when you heard theatres were closing?
I was doing a season at the RSC, and that was going to take up most of my year. And I'm actually still here. I got locked down here.
You're in Stratford. You're in Stratford upon Avon.
Home to London, hopefully by the end of April.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I've just been pretty much isolated here.
Oh my goodness! But Stratford's a nice place to be, I guess.
It's fine for a visit or when you're working.
Yeah.
But every day, I mean, I'm literally 5 steps away from the river. It's like Chinese water torture. It is me and every day.
Oh my gosh.
Hard to explain.
Wow.
Yes, there are millions of stories out there. We've all got one, you know.
Yeah.
But
yeah. But so, well, thank you. That gives me a really arresting picture of genuinely how your life and work stopped. And of course, as you say, we've all got our own stories. But I do just want people who might not work in theater to really appreciate how disruptive this has been. Just briefly, how would you say that this has disrupted your life and work? That's a big one. I see Claire like rolling her eyes. Does anyone want to try to tackle that? Are you feeling like you just want to put it behind you? Hannah, what about you?
I think initially, I actually initially felt some sort of calm, in the sense that everyone for once was in the same boat. And I graduated in 2019, and I think the kind of 8 months before this lockdown, you know, you'd had that rush of like trying to get a job, you know, really, and actually suddenly there was this calm of everyone's in the same boat. But that didn't last very long, of course. And now, you know, we're hungry to get back. And I think just that expectation that, you know, we all just carried on and found a way to keep practicing our craft. I think that's the hardest thing as well, because, you know, finding ways to, you know, practice your dance in the kitchen, or practice your singing, and practice, you know, acting. But so much for me, that acting is about responding to someone else, responding to someone else's choices. And that's what I found especially hard, to kind of keep practicing your craft, really.
Ray, you said yes.
No, as I said, I agree with. I think one of the speakers said something about, I thought it was going to last like 2-3 weeks, a month maybe, and then I got a text from a friend saying, "Ray, this might be going on for about a year," and then sort of my world just, I thought, a year. But then you start to make contingencies, you know, for things like that, because there's nothing you can do. But as I said, if you were in the theatre, I think after about 4 or 5 months, screen, if you were doing TV and film, you could go back to work, which is fine. But for theatre, you know, I mean, theatre's my first love. Somebody was just mentioning Stratford upon Avon. They're in Stratford, which is, I think during a lockdown is would have been fantastic, you know, to be in somewhere like Stratford. But as Hannah just said, performers need to perform, you know, and for young actors, you know, I just, you know, I mentored some of the young actors in the National Youth Theatre, and you know, they've had to do all kinds of things to try and get their plays, you know, going. They were just sort of, you know, in their training and getting ready to start rehearsing their plays. I mean, everything is all within a time frame. You know, people just leaving drama school. You know, drama school leavers have just left. They've come out. There's nothing to go to. It's just, I think for theatre and performance, it's been horrendous. And you know, I just think the quicker, you know, we sort of try and get back to some kind of normality, you know, semblance for everybody, but you know, for performers, you know, the better, even if it's just, you know, with a small audience. But I've heard, you know, there's positive things that could be start happening around about June, July,
Yeah.
which hopefully, you know, that is going to start happening.
And can I just check also with everyone, particularly obviously Ray, you mentioned you do you know, a lot of screen work as well, but for those of you who are more based in theater, it's also been a huge issue that many in the theater industry have not been eligible for the kind of income support that other industries have had through furlough and the self-employed income support scheme.
Yeah.
How many of you have received support? Just a show of hands. Who's received any kind of support? You have it. Okay. Oh, Hannah. Oh, Hannah. I'm sorry. Oh, Hannah.
I didn't have
Yeah,
like a
that's
full tax year yet. Like I hadn't been
Yeah.
out of drama school long enough.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's yeah.
That year of income. So I'm very lucky. I'm living at home. So having that kind of family support. But yeah, it's we've fallen through through the loophole
Oh,
of it.
oh, I'm
That's
very
the point
sorry.
I'm making. That was the point I was making for young actors. They, you know what I mean? They're not going to qualify for, you know, receiving the benefits or anything, and they've just left drama school, or you know, maybe the year, 2 years, so that their financial years, you know, they don't have the 3 years that they could, you know, you know, that makes them eligible for the grants and stuff. It's horrendous.
It
It's
defers you
really
from
horrible.
doing it before you even. It defers you from doing it even before you've had a go at it, really, which is the really sad.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
But you have not been deterred, because here you are with us, Hannah. So, so in the context of what we've just discussed, how did it feel then to have this opportunity to do something in theater? Okay, not on a stage in front of a live audience, but to be performing and to be remunerated for that work, because a lot of people have been saying creative during this time, but not necessarily able to get paid for all of the work that they're generating. So Hannah, I feel like I'm picking on you, but I'm going to start with you anyway. So Hannah, how did you feel when you heard that this project was going ahead on hostile ground, but in this different form, and that you would be involved in it?
I was mainly just excited because I think it's an important piece as well. So I was just glad it's getting a platform and we're able to you know, able to do something with it even in these initial stages. But yeah, and it was really nice to sit down and have a script to work on and have music to really like interrogate and you know, because it's a complex piece, and it was a really interesting piece to work on, and having not worked on a piece, because I think obviously naturally it being quite an ensemble piece, it was different, you know, not being able to be in the room with people, but having to kind of be really accurate and do that on your own through recording. It was just exciting and really nice to be a part of. Yeah.
Nice. And Jackie, being stuck there in Stratford, how did you feel about having an opportunity to work on this?
Well, trying to self-tape in this lounge was a nightmare because of the river. All you could hear was zzzz in the back because I was right outside the window. I didn't have any self-tape stuff, you know, light rings or anything like that. So I was literally blue tacking my phone to the window the best
Oh my God.
place where there was light. So that's where I mean, obviously I've done self-tape before, but I'm at home in the right place. But that was my self-tape journey during COVID, which is much better, I think.
Yeah.
Whole film now.
Yeah.
For me, I've been in the business for 33 years, so I'm in a slightly different position to Hannah. So for me, I was just recommended by somebody else, which is all a fantastic thing, because I think that's how you carry on your career. You know, it's like a job, but the only way that you know that you've done the job well is if someone hires you again, or they recommend you, you know, kind of keeps you going after a while. So I was very happy with that. I was very happy to be paid a little bit of money for it, because, you know, none of us, we've all said not practicing and all that, but we're all human beings. We've got bills to pay, you know. I have to pay here and bills to pay in London where I live. So, you know, it's not been easy in that way. And I think that's a real thing for people who are not actors to understand, that it's not just all jumping around and, you know, I'm just doing what I love. We are also human beings who need food and shelter in the same way that everybody else does.
Yeah. Michael, how about you? How much work have you been able to do since theatre shut? Is this kind of like one of many projects, or does it stand out for you?
What have I been doing? I've done about 3 or 4 play readings. I had 2 TV jobs. One sent me to Cardiff and one sent me to Marrakesh. Really sorry.
Wow.
So I've been very lucky. Yeah, obviously having to not do the theatre stuff that I was going to do has been a bit devastating. But I'm, you know, just as Ray was saying, my thoughts and my heart are with young people at the moment. You know, it's just it's awful. Last week I walked with my godson and his 20-year-old brother, who are both budding film directors. One day, give me a job. They've really struggled, mentally struggled. You know, they just don't get it. And it's not just the fact that they were bursting at the seams to be creative and suddenly nothing's happening, but it's also just like other stuff you want to do when you're young. You want to get laid and you want to, you know, it all just can't happen, and it just really has messed with them. But in terms of in terms of on Hostile Ground, it's been so unusual. I've never had a job anything like this, really, where you're creating something using sort of like the technical things that you've got at your disposal, like microphones, but also just like so crap at that sort of stuff. Most of it was just stressing about the tech, and also only having the material that I've been sent, which is unbelievably strong. I mean, I just went, oh, this is amazing, you know. But it's only a small amount, and I knew a fair bit about the Windrush scandal, but obviously you just wanted to get properly immersed in it, and you know, having spent so much time in isolation and not being creative, it all came out in this sort of splurge, because and also the rage that I was feeling inside me anyway, as a result of last summer, Black Lives Matter and everything, and just not having an opportunity to express that rage other than just shouting at Twitter. You know, so a lot of that energy, I think, has been channeled into this project as well.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, well, let's just pick up on that. How familiar were each of you with, you know, the musical is about the Home Office immigration policy to create a hostile environment for immigrants, and part of this is the Windrush scandal that Michael referred to. But how familiar were you with the Home Office's approach to immigration generally, and are there any personal connections with Windrush or other aspects of it? Ray, can I start with you on that?
Yes, my parents were Windrush generation, um, people that came over from Jamaica in the 50s. So yes, I have a direct personal sort of connection to it. And yes, I knew about the hostile environment. I knew about what was happening to quite a few of those. They would have been. My father had a couple of kids before he came over to England. Not with my mum, and those kids never came over. I mean, but they would have been at the age of, say, some of the people that that basically got caught up in the whole hostile environment thing. But they would have been at the age. So basically, it was it 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 it, it was the children of the parents that had come over in the early to mid 50s, like my mum and dad. So yes, I did have a personal collection. So when um God Almighty, I forgot our director's name.
Charlie Westenra. Charlie.
So when Charlie, I've worked with Charlie, I've known Charlie for years. So when Charlie asked me, I sort of, I said, yeah, absolutely, I'll be a part of that. And yeah, and what they'd written, I'd sort of known a bit about, is it Sylvester Marshall's, the character that I was playing. I knew a bit about his story too, and it's the Windrush, the actual hostile environment as well. There's a great um, documentary that David Olusogun does about the actual about the hostile environment happening before the Windrush people have come here, which is a great documentary if you watch it. So the hostile environment was happening in basically the early 50s before anybody had come.
Right.
And then it was sort of later on. So, but it's a great connection if you do want to know a little bit more about the Windrush and the hostile environment. Yeah, so that's my direct connection to it. And so when Charlie asked me, I said, yeah, absolutely. I will be a part of it. Yeah.
Thank you. Jackie, do you have any connection with the Windrush generation?
Yes, my family comes from St. Lucia, so basically the same as Ray. I'm a descendant of St. Lucians, but part that I was playing was Simone, who's from Chagos or Chagos. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce it correctly, but suddenly I discovered these people who actually speak the same language as my family speaks in St. Lucia, and very connected to that. And it was just so weird because I've been alive through their whole struggle and I'd never even heard of them.
That is so interesting that you say that, because same. I thought I was fairly up to speed and politically engaged, and I had not heard I had not heard of the Chagos Island scandal. But do you want to just briefly explain what that is about?
In a nutshell, they are basically descendants of slaves. The islands are in the middle of the Indian Ocean, sort of in the middle of nowhere on their own. And the people that have been left there are descendants of people that used to work on coconut oil plantations. Colonially, it was a fight basically between Britain and France, which is why they have their French Creole language. And then in, I think it's 1968 to 1973, Britain basically gave the island to America so that America could set up a military base there and keep an eye on Afghanistan, Iraq, and Iran. And in doing so, agreed to just expel all of the inhabitants of those islands. So they literally arrived there on one day and put them onto a boat and sent them all to Mauritius with nothing and into poverty. And over time, some of them have come to England, and then with the same thing with their descendants not being able to come or not being given citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
They have not been allowed to go back to live in the place that they're born, which I just find so arrogant. I mean, how much more arrogant can you be? There are all sorts of other people, but they are not allowed to go back. And I found out that they've been to court a number of times with the court on their side, but then the Queen had some kind of special clause where she can say no, and she said no. You know, so I find their story quite pertinent, especially with things that are going on at the moment with Meghan Markle and the racism within the royal family and stuff like that. I mean, it kind of makes it ring a little bit true.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is, in the series of videos, that is something that you communicate really powerfully in the monologue, which is part of the video. I'm not sure if that one's been released yet, but that's one that's called "Where Have Those Years Gone?" Is that right? And then Ray, you mentioned Sylvester Marshall. That you also tell his story in the video "Waiting Room." I'm signaling these for people who are watching to make sure that they can go out and watch those particular videos. And Sylvester Marshall, just briefly, he came here in 1973 as a teenager. Is that right? And his story
came,
is,
I think even before that. Well, basically his story is I think he went to the doctors for a checkup and found out they found that he had cancer, and but he went in for the treatment thinking that his treatment was going to be done on the NHS, and they hit him with a £53,000 bill and said that he wasn't a citizen of the country and that he wasn't entitled to any NHS. He wasn't entitled to use the NHS. And his fight basically was taken up by, I think it was Patrick Vernon, sort of was the one who sort of made his story more prominent in the press. And it took him about a year or 2 years, but basically within that time he'd lost everything. He lost his job, literally everything. I think he said he had something like 53 pence in his bank account, let alone £53,000. So basically, you know what I mean? He was just going to die of cancer.
Yeah.
Without treatment. You know.
And we also get a glimpse of you in another video when you come back as Patrick Vernon, I believe. Is that right?
I can't remember.
I think
it was a couple of lines. I think it was a couple of lines.
Yeah. But, anyway, you're playing real people. So let's hear a little bit more about some of the real people the other actors are playing. So let's see, Hannah. Now this is embarrassing because this is actually a line in one of your really powerful things about lambasting people for not being able to say your character's name, and I'm gonna mangle it. So tell me, pronounce the name of the character that you play in the video that's named after the character that you play.
Yes.
How do you pronounce the name?
Her name is Agnieszka Wojcik.
Thank you. Okay. So tell us about Agnieszka. Is Agnieszka also a real person? And give us her story in a nutshell.
Yeah, so she's basically a young Polish immigrant and obviously come to the UK and working at Buy One Burger as a server. And the monologue that I've done basically details her experience of an ambush, that's how she describes it. It's quite rightly what it is, of these immigration officers coming in and you know, they've basically been lied to, her and her colleagues, who are also immigrants. Some of them, you know, they've been told, you know, there's going to be a new burger today, and you know, you need to come in early to make sure, you know, you're ready to serve the customers. You have all that knowledge, and then this ambush occurs, and you know, orchestrated by the management, who is this silent kind of this silent member of the scene. There's a line that she says, "The management evaporate," and I think that kind of says it all in terms of the power that the management have been given in this kind of situation. And yeah, so they're kind of interrogated and asked for documents and things like that. And it also speaks of her experience of her colleagues rallying around her, basically to support her and protect her, which is, it is not their job to have to do that. That should be the management, that should be the government, you know, and this whole kind of secret way of kind of bombarding these, and young people. She is young, and not really knowing, because she's in shock really when this whole situation happens, in how to respond and how to defend herself, you know, because she does have a right to be here in the UK. You know, she pays her taxes, all this, but she's not given any opportunity to disclose any of that information really. So yeah, that's what the monologue kind of you know, explains, her kind of experience of that brutal ambush. Yeah.
And again, another really powerful piece. Claire, tell us about some of the people you play. I'm not sure I even know if we're aware what all of their names are, or if we learn their names, but tell me about the character that you play in Darkness.
So she's based on a real character. We don't actually know her name, because I think for confidentiality reasons it was kept. But she's called Sarah in this, and it's based on a real case of a woman who was, I mean, it's awful, was kidnapped and raped. And when she went to the police, or managed to get to the police, she was actually 5 months pregnant. She was taken to a safe facility, and then not soon afterwards she was arrested, and basically treated as a criminal, even though she was a victim of a crime, because of her immigration status, which is absolutely terrible. So I think Darkness is about her experience and about how she feels about the justice system, and I guess two similar women who are going through the same thing, because there was, you know, there were lots of other kind of similar cases. I read one where a woman was saved by her neighbour. She was beaten by a man with a belt, basically. She was taken over to this country by someone with UK status, or you know, who lived here, and she didn't have that, and was treated as a slave, basically. And when her neighbour did kind of save her and take her to the police, the same thing happened. It's absolutely awful.
That's horrendous. And Michael, last but not least, you are not playing a migrant, but one of your key roles is as a whistleblower in a really brilliant piece that actually centers around the Home Office, the baddies and all this, I guess. So, but not the whistleblower. Tell us about the whistleblower. And again, is this a real person?
Yes, I mean, he's a real person. He kept his name out of public knowledge, so we don't know who he is. We do know that he's been sent the song though, so that's cool. But there was more than one whistleblower. He was the first, but there were a couple more after that. These the piece is called Whistleblower, and it's about what happened in 2010, originally with a brand new, fresh Tory Lib Dem coalition. One of the first things that happened was they were told in this office in Croydon, this immigration office, to destroy all the landing cards. And these landing cards had information about when people arrived in the country, who their children were, or who their parents were. So it had all the information about.
And the reason that the landing cards were so important is because they were told they never had to get passports because they were invited to the country. Is that right? So
exactly.
The landing, and then years later, they were asked to provide proof.
Yeah.
And the proof was a landing card,
but
the Home Office had them and destroyed them.
Yeah. And so in 2018, when this hostile environment was, you know, really underway, finally it came out what had happened, because and the whistleblower stood up and just went, I can't let this go on anymore. He was experiencing in that office that kind of gotcha attitude of people, of just kind of like the enjoyment of his colleagues kind of going, yeah, we've got another one, yeah, we've got them, and that sort of that racism which had just built up and built up and built up inside the immigration office, and he couldn't stand it anymore. So he came out and said exactly what had happened. And amazing that people that it took that long. But I guess, you know, the fact that he hasn't given his name out just shows just the amount of trouble he would have got into. And when the mask slips on people like Johnson and May, you see just how vile and deep-seated that racism is. It's a really good piece though, because it's I firmly believe that nothing is ever going to change until white people stand up and call it out, you know, because otherwise we're just stuck with the situation.
Yeah. And so these stories are just a few of the stories that are featured on Hostile Ground. But being involved in this way that you have, have you learned anything new? Has it changed your opinion about anything, or fired you up more? Maybe, Michael, you sound properly fired up about it.
Fired me up. I mean, yeah, it's God, I don't, you know, where do you start? I mean, it's just how that attitude was changing amongst the immigration staff, and that really interested me. You know, that at one time, and people seem to really care about, you know, people fighting for their status in this country, and suddenly that turning on its head, and people getting, you know, really getting into being able to kick people out. And the fact that this came about with a decision to destroy this incredibly important document at the beginning of this god-awful coalition.
Does anyone else want to speak to that, about how it's changed or solidified their views? Anyone? I'm looking at faces.
Sorry, no, you go.
Jack, Hannah?
I was just going to say, I think, you know, my reaction to obviously learning more about all this as well, is just like, how did they think they were going to get away with it? There's that sense, you know, like with the destroying the landing cards, and, you know, you think like, you know, what else is going on behind closed doors that they don't want us to see? And it just, it makes me so angry that they can come up with such inhumane ways of dealing with a crisis. You know, that's not the way we want a government to, you know, like, surely that, you know, they may have come up with lots of different ideas, and surely that wasn't like the best, you know, of the bunch. Yeah, Michael.
And after all of this, we then get the report, the commission from this week, just gone.
The Sewell report, yeah. That's
about there being no.
Has anyone read the report in full?
No, I've just read articles about it. But Jesus,
I've read the introduction, and it's maddening. It's long though. But Jackie, you were going to speak to the question also?
Yes, I watched a video about the Chagossian people, and at one point a very small group of them was taken back for, I think, about a week or something, completely escorted with military. They were only allowed to go onto the Chagossian ground for a number of hours as a pilgrim to go and fix up graves of people that had, you know, their family members, because they were just left. But that was just another thing. And I just thought, that's just so savage.
Yeah.
You know, like, these people were forced off their land. It's been over 30 years, and you allow them to go in a small group for a couple of hours so they can clean up some old graves of their families, and then they've got to leave. So it does make me think how much more is there that's going on behind our backs that we don't know. But another thing that I love about this piece is the fact that it is on board lots of different types of immigrants, because I think that there is such a bit of a divide and conquer thing you know, and it's like we're all people together. And it doesn't matter whether you're Polish or you're West Indian or you're Chagossian or whatever you are, you know. I think that there needs to be a unity between all of these people so that they can go together.
That's
And
really important.
Sorry.
Wait,
Ray,
I didn't know about the Chagos Islands, and God, I'm going to read up more about that.
yeah. I mean, I watched the video,
horrendous.
and there was an old woman on it. The old woman started to speak, and I thought, I can understand what she's saying. That's my grandmother. That's, you know, raised by my grandparents. They spoke to me in their language, and I was just in shock. I knew that you know, people in Mauritius spoke the same as us. And actually, when my family first came to this country, as a lot of the families, they had to share properties with other families, and they had to share with a Mauritian family. I presume that's of the language. But you know, it was
as well.
a shock.
I think what they're not doing as well is actually because what you hear like in the press and stuff is immigrants that came here as though our families just came here running from somewhere. What people have to understand is back in the early 50s, late 40s, like I had an uncle that came here in the late 40s. They came here to rebuild the country after the war. So they were invited here. My mother and father were invited to Britain. They had British passports. You know, I remember looking at my mum and dad's blue British passport as a youngster. So, you know, they weren't, you know, back then, quite most of those West Indian islands they still were British, part of the British Empire. Yeah. So, you know, it was only later on when they gained independence, you know, I think it was like 1964 or something that Jamaica gained independence. I think because they were trying to take people from after 1964. So it was like, well, if you'd come here after 1964, even though your parents were here, and a lot of people had sent for their children. That's what it was. It's the children of those parents. And they came after 1964. They were the ones. Because now Jamaica and quite a lot of those islands started to gain independence in the 60s. They were then not entitled. You're talking about, you know, 50 years later. They were telling them that now they were not entitled to be here after they came here on their parents' passports, British passports, which they could have done back then. I mean, my mum, sorry to go on, my mum, they were told after, because I think their British passports were exempt. I think it was like late 70s, early 80s. And my mother and father were told to take out British citizenship. And I remember my father taking out the citizenship and saying, look, do you know what? You know, my mum was very casual about it and said she didn't need to do it. And my father, I remember pushing her, going, you do need to take this thing out, because even though you're a British citizen and you've had a British passport, do you know what I mean? You just never know what the government or anybody can do at any one time. Anyway, my father's passed away, and my mother only got that citizenship about 2-3 years ago. She had been traveling on a Jamaican passport. Had she gone to the Caribbean and come back with that passport, she wouldn't have been able to come in.
And
yeah.
That situation that you described is again told in another story in the piece of the fighter. That's exactly what happened to Patrick. Oh, I've forgotten his name.
Vernon Van Riel.
Thank you, Michael. Vernon Van Riel, who was a very successful British fighter, and again he went home as you described, and then wasn't allowed to come back.
Absolutely.
Incredible. Okay. All right. I'm aware that we are winding down in the next 10 minutes or so, but Jackie touched on earlier the challenges of creating this piece when you are at home performing by yourself, blue tacking your phone to the window. Anybody else have?
just fall down.
Anybody else have any kind of anecdotes or interesting things that they learned trying to perform this at home? Obviously very different from performing in a room with others, particularly with the incredible ensemble work. And I'm looking now at Claire and Hannah. I know each of you feature in some of the different ensemble pieces, but you two ladies in particular are doing a lot of the ensemble work. What was that like? And to see your voices then knitted together so beautifully with so many others. What's that, Jackie?
It sounds fantastic.
It does sound fantastic, yeah.
It was so nice to hear all the voices come together, because as you say, when you're on your own recording your little bits and you know, hearing them in isolation and if you're doing any harmonies, anything like that, and then to hear it all put together and how it's meant to sound, it's really incredible. But it does require a lot of accuracy when you're doing it on your own, to make sure then when it comes together it looks kind of cohesive and like it wasn't done on its own. So yeah, that's definitely a challenge.
Claire, what about you?
I think it's just the same as Hannah. It's kind of like you don't get the instant gratification of, you know, when you're in a rehearsal, you do a phrase and then everyone sings it all together and you can actually understand how you fit as a larger piece. While with this, you're kind of just sat there doing it your own to a camera and you're going, oh God, I hope this sounds good when it's done. I hope I'm just like singing this right. And then it's kind of the positive thing is when you do get the finished product in the end, you're like, wow, this is amazing. And it's the surprise of that, which is really nice. So it's kind of, it's positives and negatives.
Yeah. I think
were there any times
as a singer, I love what I get off on is the vibration of harmony when I'm in the room singing with people. There's something about that vibration that you make when you're with other people that is a really nice feeling, and so I missed that a lot.
Yes.
I really did miss that.
There's an alchemy that is really hard to achieve with a Zoom creation. It's kind of amazing that it has. I just think it's magic, because there was a moment where with Mike, the musical supervisor, was trying to teach me some pretty tricky rhythms, and he was getting me to clap, and I was going, but there's a delay, so I can't actually stay in rhythm because of the Zoom delay. This is killing me.
Oh, now see, that's interesting. So you had rehearsals online with Mike and Charlie, is that right?
Yeah.
Did everybody benefit from that? That's amazing. And then did you do the performance on Zoom, or did you record yourself and send it in?
You record yourself.
Yeah.
You recorded yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
can I just say, I
right.
just want to say, I didn't do anything. I just, do you know what I mean? So, I mean, the technology for me was just, I tell you, I've had horrendous things with the technology. I'm just not technically savvy. But I just want to say to all of you who actually did and was part of the ensemble, and it sounded amazing. I was moved. It really is moving. It's incredible. And I just thought, you know, for me, I just thought I really want to watch this in the theatre. You know, it's just something that I really do think it should be part of the theatre, and hopefully, fingers crossed that will happen. But you guys sounded amazing. It was incredible.
Well, just before we move on to that, our hopes for the show in future, I'm just going to come back to Claire and Hannah. Were there any times you had to re-record sections that you were performing, and like what was the record, like the most number of times you re-recorded something? Who's gonna confess?
It's because there was like certain like tiny little intricate harmonies or like little intricate phrases that were actually quite difficult. If you hear them sung back once, it's so difficult to get it exact unless you're in a rehearsal room. So I think there was one little phrase I think I did twice, like sending back and forth. I didn't do rehearsals over Zoom. I just kind of sent in stuff and then they would send me corrections. So I got corrected twice on something. But over a period of time, it was quite long. You're there going, just singing into this thing going, is that right? Okay, let's re-record again. Is that right? Is this a good? It's not the easiest.
Yeah, there was... I can't remember which piece it was, but it had lots of grace notes in it, like really tiny little notes. So being able to hear them, and I think, I had to do that multiple times in order to make sure it matched up with everybody else.
And how would you describe the music? We've got music by Michael Henry, lyrics by Darren Clark, who haven't worked before together, I think. So I thought that was really amazing what they've achieved, the whole creative team. But is there any way that you would describe it? I guess it's quite varied also. Michael.
Yeah, I don't think I could give you a word to describe all the music. It's got so many different flavors. I was singing in the ensemble for The Fighter, and that's good. That's a really, really fantastic song, and it's got, yeah, it carries a lot of kind of calypso beats and stuff to it, I think. But they're all so different. I can't wait to see them all in one show. It's going to be extraordinary.
Okay, so then now let's, you've both touched on that now, Michael and Ray. So let's talk about that. What having now been involved in seeing, creating the vignettes, how do you imagine the finished piece will be, and how much are you looking forward to it all coming together? We've heard from Michael and Ray a bit on that. Jackie, what do you think? What will it look like all put together on stage? And how much of an impact, how much of a punch will it have to see it live in an auditorium with a real audience?
Well, I don't know where, I haven't really pictured where it would be. But I did a play just before I came here called The Permanent Way, which is all verbatim.
Oh, yes, I did a post-show Q&A for that. Yes, I
thought I met you before, actually.
Yes, we did. Oh my gosh, I loved that production. That was so good. That was great.
Of that kind of form, you know, and how it can be. Obviously, that particular play was set about the railways for everybody else, and we did it underneath the railways.
It was at the Vaults Theatre in a site-specific kind of promenade production,
But with this, you know, there's part of me that could see it maybe in a town hall kind of building or something like this, but then, you know, in a way it would be fantastic to see all of them in their different places. I mean, I've been through one of those, the one that you spoke about, Hannah, I forgot what you call it. Sorry, I've lost all vocabulary not talking to anybody for so long. A raid, there it is. I was having my hair done in Brixton in a hairdresser's, and all of a sudden there was a raid, and all of these hairdressers that obviously were not legitimate, or maybe they were, I don't know. Suddenly they were in there calling all these women out, and you know, that was a real thing. And then you could see the general public at the window, all with their phones out. I think that would be a great scene to have. So yeah, I don't know exactly how it would be done. I mean, you know, it would be lovely to be on a lovely, beautiful island in the middle of the Indian Ocean and construction. I mean, to depict the island, you be there. But you know,
I'm up for that. It's a theater trip. Great. Okay. But well, I hope when it does appear, wherever it appears, that you all will feature, because your performances in the videos are stunning, and it's a really powerful piece. So now, just finally, you know, it feels like, fingers crossed, that we are starting to unlock. Theaters are announcing live performances and reopening dates. How are you feeling as performers about theater reopening? What are, you know, what's next for you? And I guess, what are your hopes, fears, expectations for the theater industry overall? And I suppose also kind of add on to that, is there anything you want to say to theater goers to say, you know, come out and support us as soon as possible, because we need to get going quickly. Maybe I've just said that for you, I don't know. But let's see. Ray, I'm going to come back to you because you have so much beyond theater as well. But Claire, what about you? What are your hopes for the theatre industry? What are you looking forward to?
I just really hope that, I mean, there seems to be, finally again, it seems to be blossoming, and hopefully coming back late summer this year. And I really hope that that happens. I think that's my main thing. In terms of career, I hope I get a job this year, but part of me doesn't care. I just want there to be an industry to go back to. I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, yeah. Michael, how about you?
Yes, I mean, I'm really hoping that any future variants are killed off by the vaccine, so that we don't have any more delays with this. That's the main thing about feeling too hopeful about it all, is knowing that, people are just so quick to go, right, that's it, we're done, take our masks off, have parties, lots of, and we've just got to be so steady and careful if we want to keep the timings right for theatre to reopen. But I'm ready. Oh my God, I'm so ready.
You're
just
ready.
Yeah.
And
And in terms of the audiences, I would just say people should just be completely okay with watching theatre in a mask for a while, because I think that will make a big difference if we just don't moan about that and just make that part of the thing at the moment. I think that's really important.
And Michael, you had mentioned earlier that you had a full year's worth of theatre kind of scheduled in. Have your deferred productions, have they announced new dates yet?
Yeah, Singing in the Rain starts rehearsals on June the 21st, COVID permitting, and then that opens in late July at Sadler's Wells, and then goes to Toronto if they get their vaccines in time. So yeah, it's all if still, but that's the plan.
But that's great to look forward to.
Yeah.
And Jackie, what about you? You're there in Stratford. Are you going to resume production at the RSC?
I was doing here has been cancelled, but the director who had curated the whole season has amazingly set up her own theatre company during this time. The season was called Project Europa. So she has set up a theatre company called Project Europa, which is based down in Canterbury. So I think at some point over the next couple of years, those 3 plays that we were doing for this season will be done by her company. I have a few things, luckily, a few options, but we'll see which one of those comes about. But I would like to say I did have an option of going to do a festival in Vienna and Germany, and I had to turn that down because of the 3rd wave, and that has been in place. Yeah. Also, I then had to come across the effects of Brexit on going on tour and things like that. So I hope that they fix that for us, because it's all really complicated and long-winded and doesn't really work for the way that we work, whether we're musicians or actors or circus people,
Yeah.
It doesn't work. So I think that's a very important thing that needs to be put in place for us in the entertainment business. And, I just pray to the producers and the people that put it on that they look after all of us, including the audiences, correctly, with no shortcuts, because we depend on that.
Yeah. So still lots of uncertainty, but some green shoots. And Hannah, as someone still relatively very early in their career, how are you feeling as things reopen? We talked before about this experience deterring a lot of young people starting, young actors starting their career out. Do you feel deterred or motivated?
No, not deterred. I'm ready to feel part of it all again and just get on with it, because I feel like I got a good taste and I was really lucky in those 8 months that I had. But I just want to get on it, and auditions are starting again now, because there was very silent, parts of the lockdown, and now auditions are happening, whether that's self-tapes or more things happening more so in the room. So it's just an exciting time, and I'm looking forward to open air theatre. and things like that that can happen in summer. And hopefully that will be a way into hoping to make audiences feel safer as well. You know, as well as wearing a mask, maybe outdoor is a good thing to, you know, that helps. So yeah, fingers crossed that people will want to come back to the theatre, because we'll be there. We'll be there, the actors, ready to perform. So yeah, I hope people come and support us. Yeah.
And finally, Ray, with all of your other projects, do you want to come back to theatre? And when do you think that might happen?
Well, look, I mean, look, theatre is my first love, and you know, somebody mentioned the rehearsal room. Whenever I think of theatre, I think of a rehearsal room. I think of that's where it starts. That's where the magic happens. It's just, I miss a rehearsal room. I have been very fortunate I have been working, and obviously I've been working in the screen industry, and their protocols have been strict. It's been fine. I have no doubt when theatre comes back, if we have to have protocols in theatre to keep people safe, they definitely will. And as I said, I've been fortunate, but I'm not worried about myself. As I said, I'm worried about the younger actors. For me, because I just think, the time for them, which should be, a time where they're doing their first jobs or doing their first tours or coming out and going to auditions, it's a very, very vital time for young actors to get themselves on the ladder, and and all that's been taken away. But I will do everything that I can to help to put people back in the theatre. It's just, I was walking through the West End a few months ago, and it was just just to see theatres closed, just to see a theatre closed for me, it's just, it makes me want to cry. I just think, God, all those performers, all those the audience members, all those people who, the stage hands, the people who are working in wardrobe, the people doing tickets, whoever, do you know what I mean? All that is, all those people have, haven't been able to pursue their jobs. And, I think it was, as Claire said, just hopefully, and there will be an industry. That's it. It's an industry that we want people to go back to. And it is still there, and hopefully it will still be there, after this. And I'm sure, people will start going back into theatre, and the vaccine has been a great lift. And I'm sure once, a lot of people get vaccinated, people will start going back into theatre. And even if you have to wear a mask, look, I've just come from a country. I'm quarantining right now because I've just come from somewhere working, and they didn't have any COVID, but they followed every protocol. I had to still quarantine for 2 weeks. I had to wear masks everywhere, and and that might have to happen here, even though they might, the COVID numbers would have gone down, but we'll still have to follow protocols, I think, for quite a bit. But I don't mind doing that, just as long as people, we get back to theatre, we get back to building our industry again. People could come in and get people back to work, and yeah.
And Ray, you mentioned really beautifully there how you feel for young actors. I just wonder, given we've got a young actor on the call with us, is there something you could personally say to Hannah, to any advice for her going forward in her career? Look, or encouragement?
Yeah, absolutely. She said what she was doing, and the thing is to keep doing what you're doing, whether it's in your kitchen or in your bedroom. You just got to keep reading. You got to keep doing the voice stuff. You got to keep, whatever it is that you got to do, keep singing, just keep, because as I said, as actors, we need to be performing. We need to be exercising those muscles. And when we're not, we get into our heads, we don't do it. We have to be doing that to keep whatever it is that we do alive. so that when we do get into a rehearsal room or we do get into an audition, we're ready. We just have to be ready all the time. So as to keep those things, just keep practicing those things, and I'm sure that it when it does pull, and things start to ease, it will just be an easy transition back into doing what we do. And it was great to actually, that's a good thing about seeing, this hostile environment, online, and seeing other people doing it was just, for me, what moves me as well was just to see performers performing. And I just thought, God, these guys are good. And that's the thing, they're good. People like Hannah and Claire and, Mike, they're good. These are good performers, and you just think, God, you want them to be seen and you want them to be heard. And yeah, and it's that, and that's the actor in me that wants to see others, doing what they're good at, and and I know where that comes from, and I know how that feels when you're not doing it.
Great. Well done. Thank you. And Hannah, I hope you take that away with you, and that'll encourage you as much as I hope it encourages others watching. And that's a great place to end, because we are ready. We're all ready to get back to theater as audiences, but in the and obviously you as performers. But in the meantime, the videos are incredible. Watch them all online. Definitely every single one. They are beautiful all together. And in the meantime, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me, Ray, Claire, Hannah, Jackie, and Michael. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye.
for having us.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.